I met a man in Orion, Tennessee, and I met a boy from outer space, North Planet, Canada. While drifting in a dream, sleepwalking, floating in the snow of the outer continent of Earth, way up north, the baby child in a strange time zone sees angels in the woods, celebrating the upcoming Christmas. White, clear, looking air, roaming angel boy, people, a town they had built, other towns floating down the steep forest edge. He could see from the sunbelt rim of Earth on the highest mountain of it, the sun at night, and the land beneath Orion Valley, Tennessee, and the outer Greenland coast, a woods ridden valley famed for bears and other unheard of animals. Off in the distance, where he was coming down and back to, was the Greenland woods of the Canadian area, outer rim, forest, Greenland, trees. There was a town up north, cold woods, where they were making a Christmas city. He swiped some trees in place in the peculiar time zone higher up and put a foundation to camp in across from him. Other children were living, clearing the shelter. Over the hedgeway above them was a gap on this mountain he was on, leading to a town of giant men. Big boys are tall, towering up above some trees that were smaller. North Greenland Arctic weather. The rain came to his shelter, and he cupped his hand and drank water, dipped in out the air. The water turned blue on the floor. Mixing it with some brush, it tastes like bread. On this concentrated opening, he did the same further down in the territory where the wind blew high. Whipped around, he slept and made clothing of Greenland tree bark fluff. A family living in Pioneer Greenland, North Canada, took him in their house before he was in the yard woods and came upon a winter wonderland. He saw deer, fawning animals. Good, he got in this snow pasture, played with them, all kinds of animals. The ice was pure like ice cream. He ate, and so did the deer, and the closer he got to them, the more he thought they could talk, charm, charming away something about the grazing badger, deer, beaver, different types of animals. He made some friends play in the snow, but the time zone was a mere distance away. Time that he wasn't going to be from. He was gravitationally moving away from. Up here was a land untouched by time, so he went from there back into the cold, rainy woods. The town was having a frosty desserts, chocolate. He had spent Christmas traveling down this earth on what was the moon. He could recall a Christmas tune. Met a man on the Orion moon of Alabama, Tennessee. It was so cold, he fought some bears and had buckskin hide just about in the forest that he drove. He built a cart that drove headed sledding down Alabama, Orion, Tennessee Lane, down the Stonehenge Mobile territory. I met no finer man in Tennessee. He was such a big strapping man that he could tame the moon and lightning in a flying cart. He drove the dimensions of the moon, and planted Tennessee forest thereon. For a second, he heard this on a record radio player, remembering from a second ago up north, he was looking down on a man of Alabama territory, Tennessee legend in Orion, Stonehenge Stadium. The old football team, all star from years ago, a fight song for Christmas and tradition about grabbing some Greenland wood, taming the moon on a shuttle, the expanse of all of its vastness, playing international football and fighting it out with some Greenland wood. Roll, Orion, Alabama, Mobile Tide, roll. This child just got into a man's house with his cousin's mom is an identical relative. He ate peanut butter and jelly. They played in the Greenland mountain dirt woods, trees in nature, the thrashed years, and the Asabans, plural, up north, where their cousin in Indian Land House Village, Cherokee Outlands, and Tecumseh around Christmas. They had a Saban cousin, clearing woods with the great trees of the forest. They took ice crank boxes and made ice cream and float cokes. Old one Nick Saban discovered a new kind of old-fashioned coke he made from an electrical crank box record player. Old-timey flavor, really good, where an indigenous people who had traveled down here because of an airplane scout from up north recovering a craft to help clear the forest. His brother lived in a NASA station land house with air conditioning. He built his high grades, took care of the terraformed camp as it snowed lightly. The boy had heard a heartwarming new birth Christmas at their house in Greenland, Alabama. I flew around the moon so high that I set out around the universe to trick wormholes traveling in the Gulf. Not only old Nick had been to the vast expanse, the moon of vaster Earth, said he could travel upside down and drink his Coke above it round. To those Russian power plant makers, well, Nick with his family were headed down every March, January, fall, back of the moon to Christmas, right down Stonehenge, Mobile, Orion, Alabama Lane to play international football. A three-time league champion, and you know it's is Christmas when the party on the moon is sandy white and snow. On a canyon on Greenland, another cousin was cutting a forest of trees going up the hill mountain. The baby could remember seeing this while floating by the snow. In Southdale, Alabama territory was an Air Force base down a less traveled dirt road stretched to the glades of the states. Maxwell Air Force Base stretched to Georgia State Territory towards Russia International Airport and south to Stonehenge, Alabama, England. In the song and legend of finding these pioneers, the Alabama children were born outside the womb with use of transistors into air-taught nurseries, a base where babies were floating in TV rooms with his cousins in the other dimensions were being scheduled this way, very newborn. In Tennessee, Orion, Triton, an outer constellation land in the Dipper and Orion was a moon called Triton, where the outer expanse moon was seen as a double moon heading outer our galactic Earth. The valley was a thick forest pointing over the sunbelt of Greenland, centered around an eclipse land. They were about to have a major eclipse shifting. This is where their pioneers settled our current built Earth. Old cartoons depicting this pioneers and historical comments. During an old Christmas broadcast, the greater state had broken up after a protest at one of these games picked up on the radio at Grandpa's. The European southern side of Georgia broke off from the League of International Football. A connected Alabama team combined Old University on state lines territory. Children would go into these fields and watch old football gearing into the tournament and eat food and drink Coke. The North Pole of our locally Earth had a stream river in the ice that on one side was guarded by the mountains, police protected land. When the boy was older, he went on an ultra marathon, rescuing the sibling tots from Air TV into the Air Force Base, Old Alabama, Florida Mobile Nursery, saw an ambulance like TV time travel broadcast. Angels helped. He ran up north to the other nursery in Canada running. New Brunswick type cousins, the Bacrin family, as an asteroid in the winter transit spring eclipse of the moon happened. The continents in Orion considered it Christmas. He swam in the river and captured some floating water, catching his breath, celebrating Christmas at a northern house. Few minutes. He joined the army on the spur of the night to get into the base, turning 16, homeschooled, and got up working, doing military firefighting, raiding old silos to set meltdown in Ukraine run by Nazis, a parallel territory, and higher up Crane region of China, Nazi para world powers pushing it on the old garbage systems of those countries, blackmailing the boy with two powerful bombs, the same he encountered while at the airport as a boy in Germany, used his superior running speed, which landed him training after playing sports in the Army. Tournaments for All-Star Alabama South pros set to air on TV never did, and some basketball reimbursed all day, all night. Running Air Force get him to try out for the Space Force secret program. He passed and made him assistant navigator pilot in training and a technical workman. In Space Force mission, they encountered the moon above its gaps over the asteroid belt in many places at once and saw what it hung on, this rift of Christmas-like air that was solid, a parallel gap that had a double-sided ground hung on a rim rocked the weld of the star, made a bottom in geometry. Linear moon, while heavenly Christmas moon planet in the Triton belt of Orion's supermoon. Major galaxy. The rain was beautiful, an uncharted region, and they could see the moon gray but a colorful band and a house on antenna communications heading into the abyss of the belt at the edge of the harbor of Earth. The boy got in the holodeck room and tried to swim in the intense speed of the abyss, water rushing straight faster than the fast waves of the star or beyond mathematically measurable. Beyond a sun rift canyon asteroid belt, as they went up a dimension in this alien craft that was decked with technology, the best vortex drives engines propelling them on as they were out of control. On the way home after this, a detailed in the Space Force mission, he played sports at those stadiums for fun with a crowd, rough league. He was being flown home through systems and the Army. He was talking to old Nick about this. He said in the olden days they had to try to go around those belt bands regularly, not the star, but the rift of its sun belt halo. Managing it made him proud. To see someone do this to that level and think someone should have made it safer or better tested the tech used, he assumed him next to Radke as they traveled on a craft at the speed of light 5 that it was not planned. They fell into it, but unconsciously drove through it. They were decking all airports on its arrival, fast boardings, somehow unconsciously. It's like the Greenland time zone was showing up when he was a baby. He got out and ran up the hill of green trees with Radke, who also grew up here on a forest rim of Earth, infinite. Base depots behind him. An old train up above was the shelter he took. He sat down, his old paw. Nick said, "What are you doing?" He almost laughed to remember him. He said, "You look familiar." He got his location to contact him. They were still traveling very fast and stopped to see a movie about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at a truck stop at the airport. He watched part of it, but he had to leave and said he would see it with his family later. As he got the time out of sync on the moon lunar day, eclipse from one base to the next, he remembered and disguised with Radke about the metal drone from the galaxy over the abyss groove in the star full of mercury that fired, and they subsequently fired a rod and metal plate flung off. They grounded into the ice rim on the outside shelf of Earth Universal, one planet. Radke had a drive in his pocket. They had Nick with them. Radke said, "We're going to need a high charge and electrical jolt to operate this." Why, they said, "Because I have been tasked with testing out a new mode of travel called the Earth Tram System. You have been helping me to do reconnaissance, set it up." They went through these angel-charged elevators. Rad told them not to be scared, and to the fort west from Point A, strict place where the astronauts still recovering, the pilots in hyperbaric cold oxygen. He just got out. They gazed down at the star, stellar radiation, bright silver light, clear, luminous razor walls zipping against silver, flickering stellar star engine stations like miniature star stations. Their emergency engines brought them through. In a gulf of a star down a channel walled in hot stance, stations in the star could almost be vaporized. And yet, breathe them on the other side was ice, straight drop, and Earth's lower dimensions, star, moon, asteroids. They call a transmitter after coming here to get out of the black hole with all the speed warping inside it. The plate found ice. It's seen most missions now were finding water-based systems or ice ones. The government knew the ice was there, but did not more shelf way out there beyond and bigger of ice. Before, at Greenland, he thought he saw a giant man wandering around. He was super strong from all this warping, and faith made him faster, tall, even because over the gulf of water, abyss ocean, they were drinking soda from the fridge. The stronger he got, more built his stature was, and the craft became bigger on the vortex inside engines. Into the outer oxygen dimension, outside space-time, in our realm, universe, standing taller than God for a few seconds. His arc shimmered. He could remain low to the ground with his frame, but have more comparable height swaying. He was taller than they were going to take him to get checked out. They had a major power plant here that Radke wanted to see, just as they planned a acid he shoved a placemat in front of. They ran through the ice. Nick came along on the other side while they were gone during the eclipse of the moon and Universal. They had been omnipresent for a few seconds, gone, running out the room. They ran very fast into the device, powering up through a playground unit, a ice slide, jungle gym, high-tech powered, and ran over down a dimensional gap to the frozen shelf. The teleport, their plate out to the frozen belt plane, cooling down through the wall, much like the particle space warping accelerator goes through a star wall in one place to at once faster running. The tram engines from the craft power cell computer left were on the way back. They landed partially at high speeds on Orion Earth, unseen before it was triangled them as they ran back and jumped into the field of the plate back. The teleports got on the government computer and made it rain. Teleporting to the shelf ice world. 2 hours in 1 second spent there between running there and back. Altogether another time zone, but frozen, very cold. Bringing water and analyzed spun faster than light into Earth's weather from this pure. Government warned it stopped. The universe had a gap that brought pure weather in since the Gardens of Eden days. Pressurized pure oxygen, pure rain, water, controlled by this transistor, teleporter, computer power plant for ice, snow, playground. The ice warrior, like civilizations beyond them, they invent the galactic government's weather control universal and soon a new tram system that in many old cartoons saw were going with power stellar engines, give travel to other rich systems faster. They were down there 11 hours gone by jumping over elevator shafts at the power plant. While they were building an addition to the school building and hospital, all this was made so that it was preserved in the TV nursery children's safe to be developed. So the technology helped the baby nursery. Strangely enough, his mom had been to school here. They talked over the phone and the airport drove him and sent them home for his birthday. Wow. These men made it there and back. Nick came partway and managed the power. The boy kept his beige pants on from the army with pockets he had smuggled on board a camera detailing the run Christmas. His trip and the space plant station's aliens, he kept it at home offline computer download. The footage on the Russian galactic radar, speaking of missions around Sunstar drones from the ship's computer. On the way out, USB digital camera he bought before on Earth while watching the English Brunswick talk show International and the sports army tournaments Saturday. Ian Chess was a friend of the family as he was being born in the Alabama Woods Mountain Hospital, and his cousin on his nursery video was a native Christmas party, Drummer Boy, all the classics, Jesus Nativity People, role play, fun party, a rich mining colony, gold miner for the Learning Channel for gifted young international time zone children. Teaching babies showered their Earth Orion Cold Lake world where they mine for space gold special. They had weather control devices. Many unit weather control companies made up Earth Broadcasting Weather Control, photographed from a children's teaching unit where the boy was a silver space leader on a ship he developed, and he helped develop systems for the government. The doctor had a air cinder party on Christmas over the air famous. The boy drifted by and was being taught and raised on their entertainment 1988 to 1989. Time zones merged on 1990 spring to winter, an unusual spring to winter, where it was cold. Spring equinox up north on Orion, powerful start of Christmas. They got dressed up. People outside, other children had climate control ages. The boy ate Frosties, and in the playground on Christmas Mountain, played with giants in the snow, blizzards, staying with learning center moms. Workers, tutors had it recorded onto VCR tape and microfilm in the warmer spring he played. At the landfill airport on his property, schoolyard, family, farm, electromagnetic, these things as his very soul was being cradled by different families, twins. A doctor took a picture of it next to a soundstage where his neighbor worked at the TV studio for children. Public. He met some of the old network's famous band members who were using time zones to lower their age. John Roper, who later had a very big family. Here Christmas came, one of his hits. Those contacts of his he remembered with his neighbor Jim drove him long way home. Cabs, cop cars, and police escorts to drive and fly the territory after the mission to the outer state of the world. This was developing these engines for power and flight. However, these missions were over outside of mopping up old programs, returning the lost with the drones when stable. What was left for the boy who was ready to live abroad, cash in his fortune, or make more to live abroad, Triton Orion was on the map. He was ready to go back to living with his parallel world and the new frontier of Triton that he barely had dreams of as a boy taught. People like Nick Collins and his parallel relatives could get him out there. Nick had acted and appeared in films about hunting bears, the wilderness-type documentaries, Off-World Forest, Brack Frontiers, according to the old legend of the lost pioneers, people that traveled outside our world or to us off-world. Through the centuries, lived in a world with a different climate. Christmas was a well-known month, and since their mission, climate was changing to do just that. 380-day calendar. As a baby, he started around that time zone on zero, dimensionally. Coming into Earth during a rock storm, weather was violent. Like many years and local black voids to holes took him back to Earth as a higher time of space. 4 months in space is equal to the 4 months you spend on Earth, depending on how high up you get. Astronauts gone thousands of years, way up above, would only age in the void a few years or decades out of the thousands. Their families was, of course, an astronaut family, but we were proud pioneers like Daniel Boone, a Earth legend. Their legend was that the climate would change and bring back the lost colony, being eclipsed by the Triton Orion moonbelt now tethered to Earth. The forest was now open where were these pioneers. On Earth, January and Christmas, December overlap with the climate seasons, and due to the oxygen pure from the transistor hole, the oxygen coming from the gap in the star, pure snow, green grass, well watered, the equinox into March, sometimes at night, fell back to a relaxing way to sleep, much like the sleep he had in the mountains as a baby. A boy on the water forest bed was a brook double-sided red glare on the ground where he could watch the sky glare and pick up TV shows about these great men, somewhere into the acting or live entertaining ground shows, international space missions, pioneer news, sports, old movies, cartoon, modern TV shows, and that his uncles and grandpas showed him further fishing in the creek. They met up with their uncles at a restaurant that cooked their fish, a winter spring wonderland, Alabama, before droves of others moved in, abandoning the farms to create city life. Collins, their friends of his uncles, distantly related to him, was the great relative of the famous mountain man Collins. Green and black grainy cartoons depicted a mountain man exploring hillside with and the quest and encounters and fights with animals, triffing trauma, scouting into vast gully lands, mountains, waysides, towers of the mountain. If the Triton Orion legend were true, they come back to the land, changes people going back to working the land, hunting, building, and the hidden population of people that had been saved, translated into society, and their children would be coming back home to the Orion Valley. The Earth would sift to an eclipse pole, and the exo-Earth system would deroute the population back. Rad and Radke had played football out in the Orion, Alabama Mobile Hinge Stadium Center. He now wanted to look for the valley where they were said to be suspended in gravity, still there. There was this old famous book about them, kind of a Bible dealing them, ancient manuscript, lost but found. It was said they could outfight, outshoot, hunt anyone, and there wasn't a man they wouldn't challenge to a sport of the ancient game of tournament sports, war, rebellion, where they fight it out. The winner in the end with Greenland, Tennessee would, even to the police dropping them to beat them in sports, and for the titles around the space sun a few times, or systems of the stars. Best pilot, hunter, fighter, sportsman, and story tales arose from this, which was part of who was the best playing Indians in war. It was known people came back from fatal injuries with just a scratch. The climate was so good. The woods were where jungles that would grow up overnight lands had to be remapped due to tidal shifts. Here, the Earth's inside and outside crust tidal moved to different places, putting it a few degrees off level. For this reason, they would move camps, redo the camps regular, except when newborn babies were brought in. They usually took them to the mystical wonderland once old enough. The giants were in the outer camps. The smart plane advanced where the old pilot cleared land by them. Space power plant, Plex, Christmas, Siren shuttle experience. Curious enough, even though they couldn't find the legends, the Galaxy nor Russian bread companies were possibly getting some cutbacks, supplying the airport's lower class population with bread. In hopes the bigger major universal company of Norse, similar to Russian universe alien people, would come back online with their bread. Slave-driven plows, space engines, how that these men could fly under the radar of the government was very unusual to speak. How great they were at the transversing society, not even their families, yet they knew where exactly were no. The moon house dazzled people during Christmas. The moon would have Christmas flashes. The family built so high up, and the neighbors, when the earth rotated, could see their mountain belt house top friends across the road shafts, the dugout bridges. The families had migrated to the old Rust Belt rich orchard territories and performed them to perfection. Mars had been settled across the volcano's land long ago before the climate gas disruption on the planet. It was in the dimensional pocket of quakes that the forest was stripped clear in the lower delts that they turned into a belt. A old family toy was handed through the TV station network, still up there. It seemed in a race of aliens once lived there and terraformed the volcano's asteroid mines, creating a normal calendar to have been lied about, misrepresented, and final flare out. Climate change terraformed it Mars to age quick, creating millions of years of Gregorian calendar extra time. The enslaved world population, their family tried to rebuild it and farm it, tunnel it. Rad's friend James was playing with him, collecting blackberries on their farm after graduating from learning network schools. The toy was his toy truck, plastic made by that old alien government, handed in through the TV networks, containing alloys that held alien photos of old Mars. It, for a time, was much like Earth. James later retired to an old grape vineyard in the woods. Rad spent spring nature days at home theater thereafter, watching the public learning channels. His grandfather showed him old cartoons, and his friend James had traveled down from up north with Jim, a neighbor of their northern families. In the windy forest, he learned of these old outdoor projector shows. James was camping, so he spent the night in a tent, watching cartoons about the wild intentions and strapping Orion men travelers, and some old films of them sharing his parallel thoughts. Were impressed about this similar thoughts on the subject. Rad went to the circus as a boy, and so did James, towards a place where, as a baby on the airport rail play yard, he saw a dinosaur, big black, left like a monster. They had some in special zoos preserved in parks off of the world built by spacemen from their time. Windy day, coming back, heckling crowds with fit tall men he played some street hockey with. In the woods and check ball, coming up on foggy creek bed dry, where people had played downrange from them days before, actually years before. Lemonade stands in baseball he joined, but only for a second. They were camping nearby. A Sasquatch had followed down the bog in the fog. His mother didn't like that. The Marine Space Station program for a vacuum cleaner station in space. He, in the fog, saw children flash by at different times, playing families. The Marianas Trench children. Space toys, robots, things towards the Orion Beltway to mountainous outer settlements, which they had a tunnelway to. Hunting in the woods for their cousins had GPS toys, robot drones, remote control cars, staying, talking to his brother about the dreams from this time, and watching shows, learning French comedy, hobo, and other shows that reaffirmed he had seen other shows as a baby. That wasn't in the package, but he could be looked up parallel. His mother prayed for him, and he rededicated to God, Jesus Christ. They would watch on TBN shows and movies at night on the TV, and Saturday morning Christian shows. She was surprised his memory was so good about things for a baby or young boy. Drama. On Channel 57, movies about future Earth or Utah aliens, he had said that he had seen one while playing with James. She barely knew what or who, what group of friends he meant. Child, she laughed. The movie depicted flight over Utah, indicating how travel was over the vast other pieces of Earth in the cosmos, that these ancient miners in the galaxy, plasma suns, control our lives, friends, but are good-natured. sounds of humming in the desert, and a Mars war, people trying to live independently. It was the holiday season in the shops near the people coming in their city from the Georgia airport, from the outer English world, and their TV stations, which you would need a Technicolor box and international shortwave signal booster to pick up, and computer. The civilizations were wishing each other happy holidays. Fruit was being given out in the stores. They had farms doing the same, gathering in the North Atlanta. The Bacon family were their cousins are doing the same. They owned a big orchard and held paradise and parties near the airports where the family road driven ran to Big Hill Dalewood's house to 3 stores average, but big for back then. Special refrigerators for the orchards of fruit they consumed on the holidays. Talking rarely, browsing a show north of the North Pole. Up there were holler type upright walking wandering creatures uncharted by their schools. Up here was a real place you could go hunting for all kinds of game on earth. It was so restricted out there wide open. It was early winter and it felt dry like fall. It rained some, but every now and then a flurry, sleet, mostly snow, dusting polar Russia outer colony was broadcasting. Some places were heating up from the bitter cold. The rad experience near Nick and one Sabin's family house near Greenland, overlooking the Tennessee Green Valley Forest. The curious thing about the cold, huddling camps in Greenland, all the houses were similar upstairs, down 2,500 square feet approximately. House used heaters and blankets huddled together, projectors to tell stories, keep warm. Half a month later, a little warmer for up there. Many children moved there from nurseries in upstate of Greenland, Canada territories. The Air Center recovered. Fast forward, they got more money, moved their people, got it fixed. He had seen some of their videos and did school on kids' grade, but grade level on the road. Touring schools and school teachers' families helped teach together with the kids at night, staying with some mountain men on a midnight clear who came out to help see the child off to school. As angels were a forest clear, light glared abound. It was the Legend family celebrating Christmas, candy canes, and merely singing, eating the hunted woods food.